Good evening, everyone. Is my voice audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Is my voice audible?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Can you see the slide on the PPT here? Yes. Is the PPT visible? Please answer.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. In yesterday's class, we discussed about contracts. What are contracts? What are the essential elements of a valid contract? What are the different types of contracts? And how can these contracts be performed? And what are the different ways in which these contracts can be discharged, and what are the remedies that are available in case of breach of contract, right? So these were the topics that we discussed in yesterday's class. In today's class, we're going to discuss about 4 different types of special contracts, right? 4 different types of special contracts. What are those 4 different types of special contracts that we're going to discuss today? Indemnity, guarantee, bailment, and pledge, right? So these are the 4 different types of special contracts that we're going to discuss in today's class, right? So what is this contract of indemnity? Contract of indemnity is a kind of security or protection against loss that one party gives to the other party, right? So how is it defined in the Indian Contract Act? In the Indian Contract Act says that a contract wherein one party promises to save other from loss caused to him by the conduct of the promiser himself or by the conduct of any other person. So I tell X, okay, you take up this work, you do this work. In case you face any problem, any loss, any damage because of taking up this work, I will bear the loss. I will compensate you for whatever loss or damages that you come across. Now, this is known as contract of indemnity. Okay. So, you must have understood from the example that there are 2 parties to this contract of indemnity. First party is called as the indemnifier. Indemnifier is the promiser who agrees to make up the damage caused to the other group. So in this example, I am the indemnifier. I am the promiser. I am saying that I will compensate for the loss. I will pay the damages. I will pay for the compensation. So I am the indemnifier, and X, whom I have given assurance, whom I have given the guarantee that in case you face any loss because of what I told you, then I will pay for those losses. So that person is known as the indemnified or indemnity holder, right? So there are 2 parties to the contract of indemnity. One is the indemnifier, and other one is the indemnified. So what are the essential elements of a contract of indemnity? What kind of contracts can be called as a contract of indemnity? First thing, there must be 2 parties involved. One is the person who's making the promise, the promiser or the indemnifier, and the other person is the indemnified or the indemnity holder. And another essential element is one of the parties must promise the other to pay for the loss incurred. So, indemnifier is making the promise to the indemnified to pay for whatever loss that is incurred. And this contract of indemnity can be expressed or implied. That means it could be through words or it could be through conduct of the parties. We will discuss the examples associated with it. And then the final essential element of a contract of indemnity is what all were required. In yesterday's class, we discussed about what are the essential elements of a valid contract. So we said there should be an offer, there should be an acceptance, the consent should be free, the consideration must be lawful. All those things we discussed in yesterday's class, which are the essential elements for a valid contract. All those things should be there, should be present for a contract of indemnity also. That means offer should be there, acceptance should be there, consent should be free, all those things should be there. So these are the essential elements for a contract of indemnity. Coming to types of indemnity. See, I told you, indemnity could be express indemnity or implied indemnity. So when we say it is an express indemnity, we also call it as written indemnity. That means all the terms of the indemnity contract are very clearly mentioned, are very clearly written. What are the rights of the indemnifier? What are the rights of the indemnified? All those things are very clearly written. Such kind of an indemnity agreement is called as an express indemnity. Insurance contract, for example, insurance contract is an example of express indemnity contract. So if I have a vehicle, I take a vehicle insurance, right? So I pay an annual premium, and if some damage occurs to the vehicle during that period, the insurance company pays me some amount for repairs and the loss that I incurred. So that is an example of an indemnity contract. That is an example of an express indemnity contract. Why? Because the terms and conditions are clearly written. Right? Next, coming to implied indemnity. What is implied indemnity? Nothing is written here. Only based on the conduct of the parties, the obligation arises. So the best example of an implied indemnity is that of a master and a servant relationship. So what does it mean? It means that, see, there is a servant who did something on the instructions of the master. And because of that particular thing, he incurred some losses. So who is supposed to indemnify those losses? Who is supposed to compensate those losses? It is the master. Why? Because servant has acted on behalf of the master. So whatever losses the servant incurs, all those losses have to be paid by the master. Though the master and the servant must have never got into a written agreement for this, but still, because of the nature of the relationship, because of the conduct between the two parties concerned, automatically a contract of indemnity arises between both of them. So that is an implied indemnity. Express indemnity is written. Implied indemnity is because of arises because of the conduct of the parties. So indemnity holder or indemnified. What are the rights of an indemnity holder? Any damage, any fees, any costs that an indemnity holder has to pay pertaining to the matter or the suit to which the indemnifier's guarantee extends, all those things can be recovered by the indemnity holder. So I tell X, you do this. If you have any problem, I will make good the losses. So now X is the indemnity holder. Any amount that X has to pay, any damage that X has to take up, any loss that X incurs because of this particular agreement or contract between us, X has the right to recover all that money from me, right? So that is the right of the indemnity holder. And when does the liability of the indemnifier commence? So actually, in the Indian Contract Act, it is not clearly or specifically given as to when does the liability of the indemnifier commence, but on the basis of judicial pronouncements, what can be concluded is that the liability of the indemnity holder, whenever it becomes absolute and certain, okay, then the liability of the indemnifier starts. For example, I just told you in this example, I told X, you do this work, you take up this work. If you face any loss, I will compensate for it. Now, is there any absoluteness or certainty in this agreement? If you face any loss, that means it is uncertain. The moment X experiences a loss and there is some fixed amount to it, for example, X's vehicle got damaged and the cost of the repair is 10,000 rupees. So what is happening here? The liability is becoming certain. The liability is becoming absolute. Now, at this point of time, the liability of the indemnifier commences. So my liability commences now, right? I hope you all understood this. So like I told you, there are four different types of special agreements that we're going to discuss in today's class. Special contracts, not special agreements. I'm sorry, special contracts. The first one was indemnity. The next one is guarantee. So what is guarantee? Guarantee means to give surety. Guarantee means to take up responsibility. So what happens in a contract of guarantee? A contract of guarantee is a contract to perform the promise or discharge the liability of a third person in case of his default. See what happened in indemnity? In indemnity, there are two parties involved, right? In guarantee, there would be three parties involved, right? I repeat once again, in indemnity, yeah, can you hear me now? Yeah. So in indemnity, there are two parties involved, but in guarantee, there are three parties involved. Who are those three parties? Principal debtor, creditor, and surety. Okay? Principal debtor, creditor, and surety. So I'll give you an example. Take for example, I want loan of rupees 10 lakhs. So I approach SBI. I go and ask SBI for loan for rupees 10 lakhs. So SBI says, we will give you this loan only if there is another person who will sign as the surety, who will give us the guarantee. Right? So what is happening here? I am approaching a bank for a loan. The bank is saying, okay, fine, we will give you the loan, but one more person has to sign as surety. One more person has to sign as guarantee. Okay. So in this example, who is the creditor? Bank is the creditor. SBI is the creditor. Who is the principal debtor? I am the principal debtor. I am the person who is asking for loan. Now, if I go and approach my friend, my friend X. So I tell X, see, please, I am approaching SBI for loan. They want somebody to sign a surety that in case I do not pay the loan, I do not repay the loan, you will do so. And without that, I will not get my loan from the bank. So my friend X is kind enough and she says, okay, I will come, I will sign a surety. Right? So there are three people involved here. Who are those people? One is SBI, then me, and then my friend X. SBI is the creditor, I am the principal debtor, and my friend X is the surety. Okay? I hope you understood. So what is my friend doing here? What is my friend X doing here? What my friend is doing is, my friend is saying, in case I, right? In case I do not pay the loan to SBI, I do not make the repayments on time, she will do it. She is signing the guarantee, right? So she is the surety. Okay. So a guarantee is either written or oral format. Right. Now let us try to understand what are the essentials of a contract of guarantee. Right. So again, a contract of guarantee could be an oral one or a written one. Right. And the second one is the contract of guarantee. What it assumes is it assumes a principal liability or a discharge duty on the part of the principal debtor. On the part of the principal debtor. That means, see, even if there is no principal liability, if one party agrees to pay another under such conditions, and the enforcement of this obligation is not contingent on anyone else's default, then it is an indemnity contract. Right? It becomes an indemnity contract. Then the third essential element is there should be sufficient consideration. There should be sufficient consideration to support the principal debtor. Right? The next one, the next essential element of a contract of guarantee is this assurance consent. It cannot be obtained by misrepresentation. For example, I just now gave you an example. I am approaching SBI for a loan of 10 lakh rupees. And I want my friend X to sign as guarantee. But I don't tell my friend that I am taking a loan for 10 lakhs. I tell my friend that I am only taking a loan for 1 lakh rupees. So what am I doing here? I am obtaining my friend's consent through misrepresentation, through false information. That also should not be there. Okay. So what is, let us try to understand the liability of the surety. Right? What is the liability of the surety? I have taken loan from SBI. If I do not repay, then my friend X becomes liable. So, liability of a surety is coextensive with that of the principal debtor. That means surety alone is not liable. Surety is liable along with the principal debtor. Okay, and it is the primary responsibility of the principal debtor to make the repayment, not the surety. That means the bank should first ask me to make the payment. Only when I do not make the payment, then X becomes liable. If for some reason, let us assume for some reason, I am discharged from my liability. Will X then be asked to make the payment? No. Surety is liable only to the extent to which the principal debtor is liable, neither more nor less. If the principal debtor for some reason cannot be held liable, then the surety also cannot be held liable. Right? So, though surety is signing the document, whose responsibility is the primary responsibility? It is that of the principal debtor. Right? Now, does surety only have liabilities? No, surety also has some rights. What are the rights of the surety? Surety has rights against the principal debtor. So in this example, my friend has rights against me. Surety has rights against the creditor. That means the bank, SBI. Surety also has rights against co-sureties. That means, take for example, in this example that I told you, I approached my friend X to sign as a surety. But assume instead of one person, I have approached two different people, three different people. So I have approached X, Y, and Z. Three people have signed the surety. So X, Y, and Z are co-sureties. Right? So the surety X has got rights against the principal debtor, that is me, has got rights against the creditor, that is SBI, and also has right against other co-sureties, that is Y and Z. So what are the rights against the principal debtor, that is me? The first right is the right of subrogation. What does it mean? It means the moment surety pays for the, whatever damages, whatever costs had to be paid. I have not paid, that amount surety has paid. Now, surety steps into the shoes of the creditor, right? The moment surety has made the payment to the creditor, because I, the principal debtor, did not make the payment, now surety becomes the creditor. Now the relationship between me and X is that of a creditor and a debtor. So surety has all those rights that a creditor has against the debtor. That is known as the right of subrogation. Then right of indemnity. So whatever loss the surety had to incur because of standing guarantee to the principal debtor, all those losses, all those damages, all those expenses, surety has the right to get them indemnified against the principal debtor. So the surety can sue the principal debtor. See, because of signing a surety for you, I had to incur all these losses. Now you have to pay all these losses. That right the surety has. Surety also has right against the creditor. What is the right? The right to get securities. So take for example, while taking a loan, I have given something as collateral, as security. Now, once surety makes the payment, surety has got every right to take those securities, take those collaterals, right? So I told you, the moment payment is made, surety becomes the creditor. Surety gets all the rights of a creditor. So all the securities have to be transferred to the creditor. Then the right to ask for a set-off. So if there is any amount that the creditor owes to the principal debtor, while making the payment, the surety can ask the creditor to waive off all that amount. So, for example, I told you I took a loan of 10 lakhs from SBI. Now I'm not making the repayment, but I have a fixed deposit of 5 lakhs with SBI. So what my friend, the surety, the person who signed, what my friend can ask is, see, you can take off that FD, take off those 5 lakhs rupees, the remaining 5 lakhs I will pay to you, pay to the bank. That right, the surety can have to ask. Right? Right against co-sureties. See, when when three people have signed as sureties, then every co-surety is equally liable to make the contribution. So X can ask Y and Z. See, we have to pay 10 lakhs, it seems, to SBI because all three of us have signed as sureties. Now let us distribute the amount equally and all of us will pay the amount. Right? That is right of surety. The next one is continuing guarantee. What is meant by continuing guarantee? See, sometimes guarantees are applicable to a series of transactions. Such kind of a guarantee is known as a continuing guarantee. Right? Now, continuing guarantee extends to all those transactions that the principal debtor enters into before the surety revokes it, before the surety cancels it. So when the surety says, see, I am no longer guaranteeing all these transactions. So whatever transactions have been entered till date, yes, I will stand surety for it. But now, since I am revoking this contract, since I am revoking this guarantee, whatever transactions have been entered to after this date and time, I am no longer liable. Right? That is the position of the surety in case of revoking a continuing guarantee. Right? Next, when does a surety get discharged from his liability? Right? When does a surety get discharged from his liability? There are different scenarios. The first one is the death of a surety. Right? So, in case of the surety dies, then there is no situation that the surety can be held responsible. So, one way in which a surety can be discharged is because of on the death of the surety. Next one is in case of continuing guarantee. We just now discussed about continuing guarantee. The moment the surety gives a notice of revocation, the surety says, I'm no longer liable, I'm no longer responsible, I'm no longer guaranteeing these transactions. Then the surety is discharged from his liability. Okay. Then the third one, if the principal debtor and the creditor change the terms of the contract without the surety's consent, okay, without the surety's consent, then also the surety would be discharged from liability. So in this case, I have taken 10 lakh rupees from SBI. My friend X has signed as a surety. At the time of taking the loan, the terms of the contract were like, I have to pay an EMI of 10,000 rupees every month. That is what was decided at the time of entering into the contract. But after 6 months, I and SBI, the bank, together change the terms of the contract and say it is no longer 10,000, it is 5,000. Without informing X, without informing the surety or without taking the consent of the surety, now if anything, now in case of non-repayment from my end, X, the surety is no longer liable. Why? Because the terms of the contract have been modified, have been changed without X approval. Okay. Then another scenario is if for some reason the creditor releases the principal debtor. For some reason the creditor says, okay, you no longer have to pay. Then the surety automatically gets discharged. Why? I told you the principal liability rests with the principal debtor. If principal debtor is not being held responsible, then nobody else could be held responsible. Right? That is one scenario. Another situation or other scenario is, see, for example, if the creditor promises to give time or not sue the principal debtor without the surety's consent, then also the surety will be discharged. See, the creditor has to take all the required steps in order to get back his money. If he is not doing that, if he is giving the principal debtor time, If he is not suing the principal debtor, then the surety would be discharged. Right? Any act or omission to do an act by the creditor which results in harming the rights of the surety. If the creditor, does something because of which the surety's rights are affected, then also the surety is discharged from his liability. And also see whatever was given as surety, if the creditor for some reason loses that surety or a part of that surety, then also the surety is discharged from his liability. Right? So this is just a tabular form which will help you understand as to what are the differences between a contract of indemnity and a contract of guarantee. So I already told you indemnity has two parties in it, indemnifier and indemnity, whereas guarantee has three parties in it, creditor, principal debtor and surety. Right? Then liability. In an indemnity contract, there are two types of liabilities, primary and secondary liability, which are with the principal debtor and the surety respectively, right? Whereas in a contract of guarantee, there is no such classification, and whatever the sharing of liability, where the absolute liability rests with the indemnifier, right? So these are some of the differences. Next, coming to bailment and pledge. What is bailment? Like I told you, that we are going to discuss about 4 different types of special contracts. We have already discussed 2 different types. Now, bailment and pledge are 2 more types of special contracts that we are going to discuss. So, a bailment is a contract in which one person transfers goods to another person with a condition, with a contract that he will return the goods after the completion of purpose for which the contract takes place. So, take for example, I go and give my vehicle for servicing. So what do? I hand over my vehicle to that mechanic. Why do I hand over my vehicle to the mechanic? Because I tell the mechanic that you have to get it repaired or you have to service it. So there is a specific purpose. And once the servicing is done, once the repairing is done, the mechanic has to return the car back to me. Right? This can be given as an example of a bailment. So look at the second line on the screen. The person who delivers goods to another person is known as a bailer. So in this example, I have given the car to the mechanic. So I am the bailer. And the person to whom bailer delivered goods or the person who received the goods is known as the bailee. So in this example, mechanic is the bailee. Okay. So I hope you understand. Whenever one person transfers goods to another person, with a contract that those goods will be returned back after the completion of the purpose for which that contract has taken place, that kind of an agreement, that kind of a contract is called as a contract of bailment. So let us look at the essential features of contract of bailment. The first one is valid contract. So all the essential elements of a valid contract should be present in a contract of bailment also. Next one is delivery of possession, right? That means property must actually be physically transferred from the bailer to the bailee. For example, I call up the mechanic and I say, I will come to your shop. I will hand over my car at 11 o'clock. You repair it and give it back to me by in the evening 6 o'clock. Right? When does the bailment come into existence? When does the contract of bailment come into existence? Only when I physically drop my car with the mechanic. Only when I physically give possession of my car to the mechanic. When I make a phone call and say, I will come, I will give you the car, you have to repair it, you have to give it back to me. No, that is not contract of bailment. Only when I actually deliver my car to the mechanic, that is a contract of bailment. So that transfer of possession, delivery of possession is very, very essential. Right? The reason for giving the property to the bailee, the purpose of bailment should be very, very clearly mentioned. What are the different purposes? Sometimes it is safekeeping, sometimes repair, transportation, storage. See, we send some items through courier. That is also an example of bailment. So we want our goods to be transported from one place to another place. That is an example of bailment, right? So what is the purpose of bailment? That has to be clearly specified in the contract, right? Then the terms under which the property will be restored to the bailor also must be clearly mentioned in the contract. That means by what time, in what form. Like for example, I gave my car. When will I get my car back? What work would be done on my car? Right? All these things have to be very clearly given. Right? Now, when when a bailor is transferring some goods to the bailee, what are some of the duties that the bailor has? What are the duties of the bailor? The first one is transfer of ownership, right? So the bailor is required to deliver the property to the bailee and transfer the physical custody. As long as that is not there, that cannot be called a bailor, and it is that cannot be called as a contract of bailment, right? So that is the duty of a bailor, to hand over, to pass on the goods to the bailee. And complete disclosure. See, whenever I'm handing over some product to somebody to be returned back to me, whatever defects, flaws, or whatever unique factors might be there in that particular good or property or whatever it is, all those things need to be disclosed to the bailee. It is my responsibility. So take for example, I've given my car to the mechanic. Take for example, I said, see, some brake is not properly working in the car. I have to tell it to the mechanic. It is my duty. It is my responsibility before handing it over to the mechanic. Right? Then it is also the duty of the bailor to defend against any losses. Right? If the bailee is not aware of some faults or some defects, and because of that the bailee has faced some losses, then it is a responsibility of the bailor to compensate the bailee for those losses or damages. Right? So these are the duties of the bailor, whatever I discussed just now. What are the duties of the bailee? Right? Now the bailee has to take charge of the possession of the property. That is his responsibility. Right? And then he has to use the property for the agreed goal. So I have given my car to the mechanic for repair. He has to repair it. He cannot use it to go to a wedding or a function or go to a restaurant. He cannot do that. What was the purpose for which I had handed over my car to the mechanic? To repair it. So he only has to repair it and keep it in his shop. He cannot use it for his own personal purposes. Then return of property. After the work is completed, the same thing has to be returned to the bailor in the condition that it was agreed upon. That is also a duty of a bailee. And then finally, fourth one is notification of problems. In case the bailee comes across some problems or concerns about the property, all those problems or concerns should be notified to the bailor. So while repairing my car, the mechanic came to know that so X, Y, Z, these are also problems in the car. Then the mechanic should tell me. He has to notify me of whatever problems he has seen with my car. So we have discussed the duties of the bailor and the bailee. Now we will look at the rights of the bailor and the bailee. So what are the rights of the bailor? The first one is the right to terminate the bailment. See, if the bailee violates the conditions of the agreement or the bailment's goal is accomplished, now the bailor has every right to end the agreement. So I gave my car to the mechanic to repair it. I asked him to return it back to me at 6 p.m. But the moment I handed it over, I saw him that he's using it for his personal purpose. I can immediately end the agreement. I said, no, give me back my car. I want to terminate this bailment. Right? Then the next one is right to demand return. So once the period of bailment expires, which could be 1 day, 10 days, 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is. Once that period expires, then the bailor has every right to demand back his product. And then if the bailor has been promised any compensation, he also has the right to obtain that. Whatever compensation amount was agreed upon, he has the right to get that back. Right? Then the right to be informed. See, like I told you, it is the duty of a bailee. If he comes across any defects or flaws in the property, then he has to inform the bailier. So it is the right of the bailier he has the right to be informed about whatever defects or flaws that the bailee has encountered in his product or property or whatever. What are the rights of the bailee? The rights of the bailee is right to possession. Right to possession. So the bailee is entitled to possess the property, use the property for the designated purposes. So I give the car to the mechanic. So the mechanic says, okay, I need 4 hours to repair it. He is entitled to keep it for 4 hours. He is entitled to possess it for 4 hours. Right? And again, if the agreement talks about some compensation, then the bailee also has the right to compensation. Right to bailee. See, bailiff has the right to terminate. Similarly, bailee also has the right to terminate if the conditions of the agreement are not fulfilled, are being violated. Then even the bailee can terminate the contract. Right to lien. What does right to lien mean? Under certain situations, the bailee can hold the asset, can hold the property and refuse to give it to the bailier until the bailier pays whatever fees has to be paid or whatever damages the bailee has incurred. As long as the bailier does not pay those, bailee has every right to retain that property, retain that asset. That is known as right to lien. So I give my car to the mechanic to repair it. The mechanic says, you have to pay me 5,000 rupees. Till you pay me this 5,000 rupees, I will not return your car. He can do that. He has that right. That is known as right to lien. Right? The next concept that we need to discuss is finder of lost goods. Who is the finder of lost goods? See, you're traveling in a bus. A person sitting next to you forgot his bag. He just got up from the bus and got down at the station, leaving a bag behind. Right? Now you found that bag. So you are the finder of lost good. So if you take that bag, now it becomes, you become the finder of lost goods, and it is your duty. It is your duty to find out who is the real owner. It is your duty not to make any unauthorized use of those goods. And then once that real owner is found out, you have to surrender him the goods. Right? But because of all the effort that you have taken, if you have incurred any expenses, then you can lawfully ask for those expenses. So take, for example, a person forgot his bag in a bus. You took that bag and maybe you somehow found out that that person lives somewhere. So you took an auto, you took a cab or something like that, and you traveled to that person's house and handed over the bag to him. So whatever travel expenses you incurred, you are lawfully entitled to get those travel expenses from the owner, right? So that is a case of finder of lost goods, right? And one more right that the finder of lost goods has is he has the right to lien. So in this example, for example, I told you, you found a bag. You spent 500 rupees to search that real owner's house. You went there and you are giving the bag, right? But at the time of giving the bag, you ask the owner, see, I spent 500 rupees to find your house, come to your house. You please pay me that. But so you have a right to demand that money, and you have a right to retain that bag with you till those expenses are paid. So you have every right to say, as long as you don't pay me those 500 rupees, I'm not going to give you your bag. That is the right to lien. Right? Then the next one is right to sell. Sometimes the finder of lost goods also has the right to sell when only under 2 circumstances. So, for example, I told you, you found a bag, you found few books, can you sell them? No. a finder of lost goods can sell the goods that were found by him only under two circumstances. What are those two circumstances? One, the first circumstance is when the goods are of perishable nature, right? So you found a big bag of mangoes, a big bag of onions, a big bag of tomatoes. It might take 10 days, 15 days, or 1 month also to find the owner. Can you preserve or keep these tomatoes or onion or mangoes for so many days? You cannot. So what you can do, you can sell them, right? But again, you have to act in good interest. That means because these mangoes belong to somebody else, you cannot sell them for 20 rupees kg when the market price is 80 rupees, right? So you can sell them at the prevailing market price, and once on finding the owner, you have to return the amount to the owner. And second situation, when can you sell? When the owner does not pay lawful charges incurred by the finder. So I told you, you spend 500 rupees to find the owner, but the owner is refusing to pay those 500 rupees. Then you can sell it. Under only those two circumstances, a finder of lost goods can sell the product. Okay? Now, what are the duties of finder of goods? So I gave you an example. You found a bag belonging to somebody. What are your duties? First one, it is your duty to keep the goods safe. It is your duty not to use the goods for your personal use. And it is your duty to find the real owner. So you find the bag, you go and keep it in your house. No, you cannot do that. The moment you found something which is belonging to somebody else and you take it, right? You become the finder of goods, and it is your responsibility to find the real owner. You have to put in efforts, serious efforts to actually find the real owner. Right? The next one is, when does this bailment get terminated? When does this contract of bailment end? Right? A bailment could be created, or a contract of bailment could be entered into for an indefinite period or for some amount of period agreed upon by both the parties. But once the bailment ends, okay, the bailee must return the property to the bailer. Right? So when does this bailment end? When does this bailment get terminated? The bailment gets terminated in the following situations. One, on the expiry of a specified period. So if the bailment is entered for a specific purpose or for a specific period, the moment that purpose is fulfilled and that period is completed, the bailment is terminated. And the moment the bailment is terminated, the bailee must return the goods to the bailer. Right? And next, another way in which bailment gets terminated is when the bailee, the person who has received the goods, if the bailee does something which is inconsistent with the terms of the bailment or which is not in accordance with the terms of the bailment, then also the bailer can terminate the bailment. Right? So I gave my car to the mechanic to repair it, but he is traveling in it for his own personal purpose. Right? So the bailer can immediately terminate the bailment. Then the next scenario is on death of either of the party, right? Either the bailee or the bailer. On the death of either the bailee or the bailer, the bailment would be terminated. And the last situation is on the destruction of the subject matter. If those goods don't exist, right, the bailment is automatically terminated. For example, car. For some reason, the car gets destroyed. Bailment is terminated. Bag. You found a bag. The bag gets destroyed. The bailment is terminated. If the subject matter itself is destroyed, if the subject matter no longer exists, then the bailment also does not exist. The bailment gets terminated. The next type of special contract that we're going to discuss is pledge. Right? Pledge. So what is a pledge? How does the Indian Contract Act define pledge as? Pledge is the bailment of goods as security for payment of a debt or performance of a promise. That means what is happening in pledge? Goods are being given as security, goods, but for a specific reason. What is that specific reason? For payment of a debt or for performance of a promise. So I borrow 1 lakh rupees from somebody, and as a security for that payment, I give my car, my some jewelry or something like that as security for that payment of that 1 lakh rupees. That is known as pledge. So this is also a kind of bailment. Why? Because I am giving my car to some person and I am telling them, you keep this car with you. The moment I return back your 1 lakh rupees, you have to give me back my car. Right? So the person who's giving the car is the pawner. And the person to whom the car is given is called as the pawnee. So pawner is the bailer and pawnee is the bailee. Okay, I hope you've understood. So this is a bailment. Pledge is a bailment for a specific reason. What are the essential features of a contract of pledge? Valid contract. Again, see, I told you all these are special contracts. They are also contracts, but they're special contracts. So whatever essential features are required for a valid contract, all those essential features are also required for a pledge. Right? Then the next essential feature is delivery of possession. So goods have to be goods or assets, whatever. They have to be transferred from the pawner to the pawnee. Right? But ownership is not transferred. Only possession is transferred. Goods are transferred. Ownership is not transferred. Ownership still lies with the pawner only. And the next essential feature of a contract of pledge is security against debt. So the pledge, the main objective of pledge is to offer security for a debt, for some money that needs to be repaid. Okay. And the other essential feature is return of goods on repayment. That means the moment the debt is repaid by the pawner, the pawnee has to return those goods. Right? So what are the duties of the pawner? Right? It is the responsibility of the pawner to provide the custody of the pledged items to the pawnee. Right? This is an essential responsibility. Why? Because see, pledge differs from other security arrangements. So that therefore this becomes an essential responsibility. And the next duty of the pawner is, see, the pawner has to guarantee that all the items that have been given, that have been pledged, are free from any liens or are free from claims by any third parties, and that pawner has the legal authority to pledge it. For example, I have borrowed 1 lakh rupees from X and I am telling X, okay, you keep my car as a pledge. The moment I repay your 1 lakh rupees, I will take back my car. Now here, if I am giving my car for pledging, the car should be owned by me. I cannot take somebody else's car and give it as pledge. No. It has to be my car. I cannot steal it from somebody. I cannot borrow it from somebody and then give it to the pawnee. So it is my duty to make sure that I own that. I have the title to that particular asset or property. Right? Then coming to the duties of the pawnee. Right? So what the pawnee has to do is he has to, whatever products or whatever assets have been pledged, they must be kept in a secure location. They have to be, carefully looked after in order to prevent any kind of damage or in order to prevent loss, right? He has to make sure that he's taking adequate and reasonable care to make sure that there is no loss or damage to the pledged item. And if in case the pawner wants to come and inspect, the pawnee has to permit him, right? The pawnee has to permit the pawner to come and inspect his property or asset, right? And in case there is any failure on the loan or any breach of the conditions of the pledge agreement, what the pawnee has to do is the pawnee has to notify the pawner. He has to inform the pawner, right? So these are the duties of the pawnee. Coming to the rights of the pawner, right? Coming to the rights of the pawner. What are the rights of the pawner? The moment the pawner makes the payment, right? The moment the pawner makes the payment, he has every right to get back his goods. So I borrowed 1 lakh rupees from X and I told X, you keep my car till I return back this money. The moment I return that 1 lakh rupees, I have every right to take back my car. That is the right of the pawner. And right to inspection, I can see at reasonable time intervals, at reasonable times, I can go and inspect to make sure that the pawnee is taking adequate care of my asset, my property. That right also a pawner has, right? Coming to the rights of the pawnee, what are the rights that the pawnee has? Right of retention, right? As long as all the debts are not paid, all the debts have not been paid, pawnee has every right to keep that particular asset. That is one thing. If in case there are any unpaid obligations, then the pawnee can also sell the asset. Pawnee also has the right to sell the asset. And whatever interest or costs the pawnee had to incur for carrying out the pledges execution, pawnee also has the right to recover those interests and costs, right? So these are some of the rights of the pawner and rights of the pawnee. So these are about the 4 special contracts, right? I hope you have understood whatever I shared with you, right? So this is the end of this class. Tomorrow's session, we'll again discuss the 3rd block, right? So yesterday, there are 5 parts to your syllabus, right? Part 1, yesterday's class we discussed part 1. Today's class we've discussed part 2. 3, 4, and 5 we will discuss in the coming days, right?
Madam, last important questions చెప్తారా madam?
Yes, last class lo cheptanu.
Okay, madam. Thank you, ma'am.
First 5 units, 5 classes I will complete.
Okay.
Then the last class we will discuss.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you.